Anita, right? So just to kind of give you some background on what a registered Social Security analyst is, I am one of them. My name is Stephen Dock. You can see my phone number here and my email address. That is stephenwilliams0000 at gmail.com. There is a rigorous process that people go through to sort of become Social Security analysts. It's a very in-depth process that culminates in a 4-hour exam that gives you the accredited ability to go out and talk about Social Security and the benefits that any individual is going to receive. And these are very catered to the specifics of every individual that has their case analyzed. And in today's case, we're going to talk about Suraj and Anita, and you're going to see some very specific details about them that will allow you to either draw parallels to their situation, or you can certainly reach out to me and have further conversation about your specific situation, because there are many nuances that make us all different. We've had different compensation over our lifetimes. We've had different various different situations. Some of us may have dependents. Some of us may have disabled dependents. Some of us may have been divorced, and we have implications of that scenario. Some of us may have not had strong income while our spouse has had strong income. So there's all kinds of different situations. And over the course of our series, we're going to do a series every Wednesday. You'll sort of see on this Zoom call, it's live, and it'll give you the opportunity to kind of ask questions, and we can certainly look for opportunities to bring a situation that's more pertinent to you in if this one is not. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Suraj and Anita. Suraj works in technology. His wife works in human resources. They've been married for quite some time. They own a home in New Jersey that's worth about $500,000. They have about $1 million in their 401k. They have paid off their home, and so they feel like they're going to be able to get away with expenses of around $50,000 per year. But they're just generally wanting to know, is there room in that number? Right? Is 50,000 a good number for them to budget for, or could they actually could they have a lifestyle that includes more? They certainly would like to do that, right? So they want to know the answer to that fundamental question that we all want to know, is sort of like, what am I budgeting for, given kind of where I'm at, right? And Suraj's salary currently is 225 plus a high bonus. So he works in technology, has a very visible job. And so, he will see years where that salary plus bonus will be over 300,000, right? Anita has a salary of 120. She gets a very small bonus, a moderate bonus, maybe $20,000 a year. And so they have some questions. What is the earliest Suraj and Anita, or both, can retire? Many of us want to know about that for ourselves. How much will our Social Security benefit be per month or year? And this isn't a round number. This is very specific to Suraj and Anita, their situation. This number is a hard number based on their 35 best years of income, right? Everyone's going to have a different number here. And if you want to know what your number is, it's pretty easy to go to socialsecurity.gov, ssa.gov, and find out what they're calculating as your current number. However, that number can be changed based on sort of future earnings. And so if you really want to get into the detail of that number and understand it a little bit more, you're going to have to talk to a Social Security analyst, because they can really break that down for you and give you opportunities to maybe even increase that number. All right. What is the maximum benefit scenario? right? If you know about Social Security, you can go on at 62. Um, and every year, and you go on at 62 at a discount. And what that means is that you don't get your full Social Security at 62. You don't get it until you reach the full retirement age. For those of us that are born in 1960 and after is 67, and that number could change in the future, um, depending on, lifespan and different factors. The other thing that they want to know is, what is the tax impact of Social Security? You may not be aware, and many people are not aware, that depending on your income, your Social Security is taxable, right? I will tell you, off from what I can see, and what we're going to talk about later in today, is that much of Suraj and Anita's tax or Social Security will be taxable in excess of it would be taxable at 85%, right? So you can see that when you start doing 401k withdrawals and you layer in a nice Social Security payment, there can be some issues there, and we're going to get really deep into that. And then the question is, in the unfortunate event that one of Suraj or Anita um, uh, should pass away or should pass earlier than expected, what would be the survivorship benefit to either Suraj and Anita? Okay, so that's our scenario. We're gonna talk a little bit more. So let's talk about full retirement. We just had a little bit of that conversation, but Suraj and Anita are of different ages. Suraj is 55 and Anita is 53. So they will be at full retirement given their ages um, at 67 years old. Okay, and you can see that here. Uh, the uh, the indexed earnings that Suraj has had over his 35 highest years is over $7 million, which is an indexed monthly amount of 16,000. But before you get too excited, the Social Security isn't going to pay him $16,000 a month. What they're going to do is they're going to do this calculation, and they're going to say, on your first $1,174, we're going to give you 90% of that, of your monthly amount. On the next, uh, uh, between 1,174 and 7,078, we're going to give you 32% of that. And anything you made above 7,000, you're going to get 15%. So his total calculated amount is $4,413. Anita, on the other hand, she is going to be at full retirement at 67. She has made, over the course of her employment, roughly something a little bit greater than $5 million. Her calculated average monthly earnings is 12,203. If we perform the same calculation that we just did, you're going to see that Anita is going to qualify for a Social Security payment of about $37.15 if she should go on Social Security at 67. We will see in a little bit that, if she goes earlier or if Suraj goes earlier, that the amount that they receive is going to be reduced. Okay. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, how is full-time retirement age calculated? It has everything to do with the year you were born. So if you were born in 1960 or after, it's 67. If you were born before that, it's going to be somewhere between 66 and 67, depending on the year you were born. There was a phase out between 1954 and 1960. Okay. And then what you can see here is percentage of your benefit that you're going to receive if you go on Social Security at various ages. At 62, you're going to get a discounted Social Security payment of about 30%. 63 is 75%. 64 is 80%. 65 is 86.6%. And it goes all the way up to 67, which is where you get your full amount. And if you should wait, you will get an 8% increase over the next 3 years. So instead at 68, you get 108%. At 69, you get 116%. 70, you get 124%, right? So clearly they're trying to motivate people to wait longer with increased amounts. But there's a reason for that, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. So, I think a lot of people kind of zero in on that 70 and 124%, but there are some implications to that, and I want to share those with you in a couple slides here. If your Social Security calculated amount, if you don't qualify for Social Security, or you qualify, but you make considerably less than your spouse, you could be eligible for spousal benefits. So along the same line, depending on when the spouse goes on, you would sort of know your benefit, right? So if your spousal benefit is any of these, you'll see, you'll get X, Y, and Z through these years. And then in terms of a survivor benefit, you can also see those survivor benefits and how those work, right? And those are the various percentages. So it's important to sort of understand what that's all about. Okay, so we'll continue. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Suraj and Anita's situation as a whole. This heat map kind of tells you their story about where and when they can go on, right? So the orange is their ultimate scenario, and so what that says is that if Anita can wait till 66, and if Suraj waits till 67, they're going to get a total payout of 1.48, are going to get 1,486,384, right? Now, there are a lot of factors that could go into why they would want to wait or why not. And you can kind of look at a couple things. One thing that's really interesting is, if Suraj enjoys working and he wants to continue working up until he's 70, that's a scenario that they could look at, right? And in that scenario, you might say Anita could really retire anytime with not much impact on the numbers. You might, if in fact one of you gets to retire at 62, and that creates flexibility in your family, for roughly 16,000 and some change, that's a choice you could make. And if you think about how money grows over time, if you're investing or doing something with that money that's productive, you could see that, you could argue that that's a no-brainer, right? So it seems like the earliest both of them could retire, which kind of results, I think, in the smallest amount, would be if they both retired at 65, 62, and at that point they would be giving up about well over $100,000 of their Social Security benefit. So you can look at this chart and kind of figure out, where does it make sense for you to make these decisions, right? Moving on, we'll talk a little bit about, I'm sorry, I'm just going to move the bar here. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that these numbers kind of tell us. So the maximum scenario is this scenario where we said it was 1,486,384. But as you can see, there are we put together some other scenarios. Here's this scenario we put together is if they're both 67. You can see they lose about $81,000 in total for their lifetimes. If they want to go earlier, where Suraj is 65 and he is 62, you can see they almost lose $100,000 in that scenario. And then the last option is one that they stay working, which is very close to the maximum. It's roughly a couple thousand off if they wait for Anita to retire. And then you can also see what their yearly combined is, roughly about 107,000. So if you can recall earlier, we talked about the fact that they were going to have that they wanted to know what their budget was going to be, right? So they had thought, they would have about $50,000 in expenditures, and that's obviously post-tax. And so if you look at their situation, even with the tax implications, we can kind of talk about what those tax implications are in a minute. You can see they have a lot of room in that number. And even if they retire early, they still have a lot of room, right? So, that might help them make a certain decision around sort of what they want to do. Even at the earliest point, it's still roughly, close to this number, right? And then the latest point, it's, this number right here. So, there is a lifestyle question there, right? And so if they want to enjoy lifestyle more, then they could, then, they may decide to leave early. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about age and, one of the, and what we, why you may or may not want to hold off. So again, we're looking at the maximum. If you look at the maximum, which is the orange, it isn't until Suraj is roughly about 80 years old that the maximum starts to pay off, right? When he turns 80, essentially, everything after 80, that's where his surplus comes in against all these other options, right? You can see that he has a great surplus against the two FRA. That's that $100,000 likely difference, or that $99,000 difference we chatted about earlier. And then this is, against the green option. That is as well the younger option, that's a little bit over $100,000 difference over the lifetime. So, when you think about it, I know it's not always nice to think about, but when we think about our lifespan and where we plan to be, it isn't always, if we have family history that sort of says that, we don't live till 95 or 100 years old, or over 90 years old, there's that conversation to be had and sort of say, okay, well, maybe it doesn't pay off to wait, right? I have a good friend who is in a family, and there is, unfortunately, the men in his family, he's in his early 50s, and the one oldest one was, I think, in the late 60s, right? And so, he's got to ask himself some pretty tough questions. He's got kids, and he lives a fairly healthy lifestyle. But, at 70 years old, he's going to be one of the oldest living males to make it in his family, right? And so, there are different morbidity conditions and different things that, we have in our family history that might lead us to believe that we're not going to, be on the upper end of this curve, right? And that's unfortunate, and it's something to think about. Certainly having a high stress job, post 62 doesn't make that any easier, right? And so, there are a lot of conditions there. So what I like to show this chart just so people can think about it. There are some places that I can send you to sort of calculate based on your current medical conditions, and how which will give some statistical information about longevity, right? And I think it's important that we all sort of think about that. Not everyone is going to make it to 100, right? So, or more. So we look at this longevity implications of Suraj and Anita, and we let's say we take off, if they live to the age that they have predicted. So Suraj is predicting that he's going to live to 85, and then Anita is going to live to 95, right? In this situation, they're going to make the full amount of their Social Security amount, right? They're going to get 1.4 million, 1,486,000 over the course of their life. Now, if they had gone in a lower scenario, like when they both waited to 67, their full retirement age, they're going to get we're going to get roughly 1.4 million. If they went early, they're going to get under 1.4, 1.387. And then if they both waited, they're going to get a little bit less than their full amount, right? So, the issue is that, we don't get to decide how long we're going to live for, right? And, and things happen. So in the case where Anita becomes ill earlier than expected, and she passes away, Suraj is going to continue to receive his benefit, but he's going to get something called survivorship benefit, right? And in the survivorship benefit, he's going to get sort of what he had and a little and a portion of what is remaining for Anita. Now, if you remember before, we talked about these numbers and survivorship. And so, depending on what choices they made here, that's going to greatly affect what these numbers are. But the maximum payout in the event that Suraj lives to his full time, which is what he thought, 85, and Anita passes early, Suraj is going to get, just for himself, 800. Well, Anita they'll get together the portion of this amount, and then Suraj will get the rest as a sole survivor. Right. And you can see that in all of these situations, what those amounts are. But interestingly, if they retired early, they would get the largest total amount. So that has a lot to say with, and we can talk a little bit more about sort of why that would be for those who are interested. But his amount didn't change. What really changed was the amount of Anita's that changes over this period of time. And then in the next situation is if Suraj should pass early, right? If Suraj passes early, Anita gets a very large survivorship benefit. She gets her benefit plus the survivorship benefit. And as you can see from the scenario, she's getting almost the same amount as if Suraj had made it to 85. Okay. So let's talk about 401k, retirement accounts, because this is a piece of information that some people know and a lot of people don't know. And that is that there was a law passed, and that was extended not too long ago, which says that starting at age of 73, you are required to start taking distributions. And if you're interested in how much you have to take, you can look at the required minimum distribution calculator on AARP, and it will tell you, based on your situation, how much money you have, what are your required minimum distributions. You're allowed to start taking at under 60, but if you don't take until you're 73, you are required to take, and there is a tax implication to that issue, right? So again, if you wait till you're 73, you're going to be forced to take these distributions, and you can take these distributions will add to your total income in addition to your Social Security, and it will most likely increase your tax rate as a whole, and which will result in less cash in your pocket. So it's important to sort of be aware of this and to know that it's great that you've got all this money put away in a 401k, but if you hang on too long, there can be large tax implications. And you can see, at some point, you're looking at over $140,000 a year in disbursements. And that's in addition to what we just said, which was, what their Social Security disbursements are. So if you look at the together with, you look at Suraj and Anita situation, they have $1 million in IRA, right? They're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood, depending on how much what their distribution is. They're going to get roughly another 85% of their Social Security benefit is going to be taxed. It's going to be taxable. Okay. We would just have too much income here for it not to be. If people are interested in what those income thresholds are, I can certainly kind of go through that with people. But what we're seeing is that, 85% of their yearly distribution, if we go back to here, you're looking at anywhere from 85,000 to 107,000, right? So what we're seeing is 85% of that number is going to be taxable income. And certainly all of the distribution is going to be taxable income. So you look at, something like, a married couple who is just on Social Security. They get 100,000 in Social Security, and they have 85% of that as taxable. You're looking at a tax rate of about 12%. Now, and that might be great in these years, right? But this money's coming, right? And there's no way to stop it. So as soon as they hit these years, I mean, you're looking at 140,000 plus another 85,000. So that's 225. So that's going to take them from a 12% tax rate to a 24% tax rate, right? And that's not just taxing what they've taken out here, it's taxing also the Social Security benefits, right? And so it's something to keep your eyes on and to be aware of, that this happens. Now, there are a lot of folks, and I know this kind of sounds scary because you're keeping that 401k money as sort of as your safety net, right? And so probably a conversation worth having. But if you delay, if you look at this as 73 and you look at 62, if you start taking this money out and you stop working early, right here, and you monitor the amounts you take, right? If I live off that 89,000 for 7 years before, or 8 years before I turn 73, I'm still paying 12% on those withdrawals, right? And I'm also getting the increased amount of Social Security. So my Social Security has now gone up 124%. Is now I'm getting almost a quarter more on my Social Security. So something to watch, and something to think about. If you have a financial advisor, I highly recommend you get this analysis done and you provide this. Unfortunately, I'm going to say most, but when you look, I look at I work with a lot of financial advisors, and those financial advisors don't do this analysis, right? The ones that I work with, they don't include Social Security. They kind of assume that that's just a little icing on the cake. But these are big numbers and these are important numbers. So it's something I highly recommend. And if you don't, not only talk to your financial advisor, but certainly talk to your accountant or tax expert, because this is a tax question. And it's an important question to kind of share with your accountant, because accountants may not be thinking proactively about what the next 5 or 10 or 15 years looks for you. But if you can show them a chart like this that kind of lays out your distributions, and they can see that, oh, wow, okay, I see all of this happening all at once, they can help you with some things. Additionally, with your financial advisor, you could have an annuity conversation. There are some strategies to leverage annuities to move some of that money into future periods or put it into an investment that if I am paying, if I am going to initially pay some taxes, that will grow over time. And so you can sort of move the non-taxable component out into the future. Again, highly recommend you talk to a tax person or a financial advisor if you need help with any of that or need some references or connections to some good professionals in this area. Please let me know. I'm glad to help. I do work with some folks that I believe could be of great assistance and great value to you. All right, so I'm going to close on that. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit about Social Security here, and talk a little bit about what we're here to do. So this analysis is based on a file that you're able to download from Social Security, from SSA.gov. And it provides some very detailed information about your lifetime compensation. And we take that information and we run it through a very complex set of algorithms that give us the ability to sort of make an assessment like we've done for Suraj and Anita. We're willing to, we can absolutely do the same for you. We do this for no charge. However, the analyst who and it's probably going to be me, is who's going to do this is going to only thing we ask is that you go to our website, rssa.com. You will find your analyst there, and to give them a review. Right? So that's all we're asking for. And so if you're interested, again, I'm going to highlight, this is my phone number. Please call, and this is my email. You can email me. If you found me on LinkedIn, you can obviously get to me that way. But highly recommend you consider doing this analysis and making this a part of your retirement planning process. I want to thank everybody for joining.